I chose GSHED because of several reasons. One of them is because of the specific program, international education, which offers everything that I am looking for. And another thing is because this program is a UNESCO chair and it gives you a chance to intern in the UNESCO offices abroad. Also, one interesting fact was the program has the dual enrollment with the certificates, which is the SOL, ATM, assessment, testing, and measurement, which I enrolled for the ATM program. So these are the main things that I chose. Of course, the program's connections is a major thing as well.
Thanks, Aitaj. So Cortland, you're next, and then we'll go to Janard, and then Sophie, you're last. And I can repeat the question for you once we get to your turn too.
Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Cortland James, and I am currently a first-year doctoral student in the higher education admin program. So if you see me kind of looking down, I made some notes to answer these questions. So one of the reasons why I wanted to attend this program is, one, I am geographically bound, so I did not want to move, but also the prestige of GW, but also the prestige of the program. Having to know some alumni of my program really helped make my decision in terms of applying. Plus, it's flexible program schedule. So my program is basically set up in an executive style format, meaning I only have class for the most part 1 weekend a month. So kind of like the Army slogan, you only have to train and come in 1 weekend a month. So that's how my program is set up, unless I want to take some electives that are during the week. And in addition, my last kind of check mark was that for me, my long-term goal in career is to become a college president. And there have been quite a few presidents that have come out of my program. So happy to meet you all and happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Go ahead, Janard.
Okay, I wasn't sure if I should just jump right in. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. My name is Janard Smith. I am a second year final semester graduate student at the Human Development, Organizational Leadership and Learning as the program that I chose. A few things about why I chose GW. Initially, I wanted to graduate on a national mall. I thought that would be a very cool thing. I've lived in DC for about 10 years, so I'm not originally from the area. I did just move to Texas. I accepted a new job offer, so I'm now located in Fort Worth. But which brings me to another reason why I chose GW, which is the flexibility in the schedule. I started out as an on-campus student, and because of the move and also because of COVID, I was able to make the smooth transition to the online cohort, which is, I've seen both sides of both the on-campus experience and the online cohort. Nothing but great things about it. And lastly, is obviously the reputation of GW precedes the university. Great history over 200 years of just providing great education for those both that's in the local area and those international students as well.
Thanks, Janard. And Sophie, in case you didn't hear the first question, it was in a few sentences, please tell us your name, your program, and why you decided to come to GSHED.
So yes, hi, my name is Sophie. I have a list over here to answer those questions. So I'm a graduate student in my second semester of the Graduate School of Education and Human Development. I'm in my second semester of 8 total semesters. I chose this program because of its KCREP accreditation, which is hard to find at some schools. And also the internship opportunity. George Washington does give you through this specific counseling program, clinical mental health counseling program, some internship opportunities, which I really like because they can get really competitive. And also the scheduling, for the first 2 semesters, they make it so that you can have a full-time job because they are mostly evening classes. And what I enjoy the most is, so far I've really enjoyed my ethics class and my sociocultural class because they've really expanded my mind on all of society, especially the ethics class having Dr. Kaplan be the professor. It's interesting going through all these other classes and reading all these papers. And Dr. Kaplan has written all of them because he's been working on ethics for so many years. Something that I like about the student aspect is that we have a group chat and we're all able to communicate with each other if we are having any issues because we aren't in class right now. And that's been really productive, especially with this unprecedented time.
Thanks, Sophie. Great. So you went ahead and answered the second question, but we'll go ahead and go back to you, Aitaj. If you could tell us what you're most enjoying about your program and the student experience.
Yes. Honestly, I was thinking what I'm most enjoying is, it might sound ironic, but I guess I'm enjoying the online learning. And despite the fact that I was so against when I started, and I am amazed the fact that like this smooth transition to online learning, I didn't feel anything different. And GW has this everything set up online and all the resources, easy access to the labs, online labs and library. And I didn't feel like I really need something except meeting people in person and communicating. But apart from that, I love the student and faculty connection where you can easily reach out to the faculty, any member of the faculty, and you can chat about your programs or your selection, everything, literally everything. Like in the peak times of pandemic, people were feeling some down. We had this happy hours. We would join and would discuss how we feel, how it's going. So I just loved how the community supported each other in these hard times.
Awesome, thank you.
So for me, I have a few things that I'm enjoying. So because of the nature of my program, I'm able to also continue to work full time. So I'm taking a full load of classes and working full time, which it can be hard at times, but it definitely works well for my schedule. In addition, kind of going off of the last comment, the professors have an open door policy. Like they're always willing to listen, learn. They are quick to respond via email. Oftentimes they give you your cell phone number too, so you can call them. Of course, respect kind of those hours of when not to call. But also within my program, it's a good mix with full-time professors as well as practitioners, meaning it's kind of putting that theory to practice, and people who also have worked full-time or who are still working full-time within the field. But of course, I would be remiss not to mention my cohort. All of us come from different backgrounds, bring different perspectives, and are at different points in our careers in which we are able to just have that insightful conversation and being able to challenge one another in a respectful way, but also to learn from one another and the lens that they bring to the program. So I'm thoroughly enjoying my time.
Thank you. Janard, you're last.
Okay, thank you very much. I was trying to take myself off mute. Cortland, man, you stole a lot of my thunder. So I'll just jump right back into what Mr. Cortland was saying and piggyback off what he was kind of describing as far as his cohort is concerned, because it is the primary thing that I'm enjoying the most about my program, which is the diversity in thought. Obviously, you know, people believe that you can just take a look into a room and just see different shades of color and ethnicity and determine diversity. But for me, in my opinion, that does not determine diversity. That just determines that people are not of the same race or ethnicity. The diversity in thought, however, is when people just choose to think different, or they think different because they have a different set of morals or ethics or opinions about things. And so in my cohort, we have, in a very safe environment, a very psychologically safe environment, we have been able to kind of get to the, what I call the meat and potatoes, and to the root of certain issues that allow us to uncover some of the implicit biases that we may bring to the conversation. And so just through this healthy dialogue, you're forced to challenge the way you believe about something, or the way you view something, or go back and reapproach an idea, because someone in the cohort may mention something that you were unaware of, or something that you didn't really take into consideration in your initial thought process. And so the other things about the program are also good as well, as far as the being able to work a full-time job and having the flexibility and having professors that kind of understand that some of us are already professionals and we're just taking an advanced degree level program. And so just having professors that understand, not necessarily looking to just drop a whole bunch of work on you and tell you to write, 15, 20-page papers without actually explaining the theories and the concepts to make it usable and make it practical in your everyday life, is something that I really enjoy.
Oh, thank you. That was really good. So now we'll open up the questions to those in attendance right now. We have lots of people attending currently. So if you can ask your questions in that Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. We do actually have one question already coming in. So the way I'm going to do this is the four of you can feel free to unmute and answer this question if you have an answer to it. If you don't have an answer to it, that's totally fine, but I want to give everyone a chance to answer the question. So the first one is, if I'm not starting until this summer, or we can say this fall, what's something that students can do to help prepare before they start?
I can answer first, if you don't mind. So I will share my experience, what I did, and I asked. I had some friends in the GShed, and I asked them about the course, and they told me that it would be perfect if I reach out to alumni or current students who study right now in the same program, and then ask about the courses or the focus, or you want to. If you don't know your focus, it's all right, but it's good to know the different types of the focus within the program, and do a little research about it. So it will give you more idea about selection of the courses, which is very important. So I did the same thing. I reached out to someone from IEP, and she told me everything and her own experience, and luckily she was in the same focus that I was planning to, and it was very helpful for me. So I searched about it, and I checked all the courses, curriculum, and I reached out to professors to get some syllabus. So that was very helpful for me, and I would recommend the same thing, to reach out to someone to share the experiences.
Thank you. That was really good.
Sure, I'll jump in and share a little bit. So this is actually me working on my 4th degree at the moment. So it's something that I've kind of practiced with each program that I've gone into. One, just kind of enjoy the time as well before you start the program, because once the program starts, you'll be entrenched within schoolwork and everything that's going on with school, and even additional involvement that you might have with extracurricular activities. So kind of enjoy the time and relax, but also contact your advisor. If your advisor hasn't contacted you, you can contact the program to ask who your assigned advisor is, just so you can make that initial contact. I can't think of another word besides contact, but that, make that initial contact. But also ask if you can get in contact with other people who are admitted and that are attending the program. So that way you can start to form that network, that cohort group, and really start to exchange ideas, contact information, and different possible interests of research. And particularly if the institution is moving back to in-person in the fall, that could be a potential roommate as well if you're moving into the area. So those are my 3 tools to share.
Awesome. Thanks, Cortland.
I have one other suggestion.
Oh, great. Yeah.
So for clinical mental health counseling, there's a pre-practicum portfolio and then a pre-internship portfolio. Before entering the program, the pre-practicum portfolio is pretty hefty. There's 200 helping hours. And if you don't start those until right before it's due, those can really build up. So starting to do some of those, you can find some of the requirements in a student handbook, maybe from previous years, but they haven't really changed much. So looking at student handbooks, which are available to everyone, could be really helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Sophie. That was a really good one. So we have 2 questions asking about how would you describe the balance between work in school and work life in school, and maybe some tips for that.
I guess I'll take a stab at this one. For me and for, I guess, a lot of the panelists, I would just suggest that you understand time management. Your time is going to be very important because essentially you have a life outside of school, and if you have a life outside of school, that basically entails work requirements and responsibilities. If you're a parent, that requires parenting responsibilities. If you're a spouse, then you have to spend your time wisely with your spouse as well, but you still have to accomplish homework and papers. And oftentimes, especially in my cohort, we have to accomplish a lot of group activities, and everyone is not local and everyone is not domestic. Some students are international, and so I had to get up early in the morning to meet with that student, or stay up later to meet with a student, because their education is equally important as yours. And so, and you guys are kind of tied to one another for a grade and an assignment, and you want to make sure that you're executing it. So for me, I would just recommend that getting into a space of time management and being aware of where your time is going each day. Maybe start a log 2 weeks before and just kind of log in how much time you're spending watching TV, and log in how much time you're spending on social media or doing other activities, so that you can understand where you can kind of make up that time at, or where you can reduce time at, so that your life doesn't feel like it's come to a standstill or a complete stop.
Yes, I can go next. I can't agree more with Leonard. And also, I would say, as an international student slash domestic student, for me, it was so hard. And I knew that it's going to be challenging as a non-native speaker. And I lowered my work time down to part-time. I knew that I will have to work hard. So if it is possible, I would recommend to work part-time, because then it will give you more time to focus on your program. That worked for me well. Then I knew that I have to work more times than any other students. So therefore, with part-time job and studying all the time, it was manageable to do it. So that's how I managed it. And also, of course, time management is a key here to use your time.
Thanks, guys. Okay, we have lots of questions, so let's start moving through the next one. Let's see here. Hi, Taj, you already touched on this already, but in general, what has it been like learning virtually during COVID, given that that's not really an experience that everyone is used to? And what advice for incoming students do you have in the event that they will be starting their programs virtually?
Okay, it wasn't easy. Of course, it wasn't easy, but honestly, I was expecting it more challenging. Surprisingly, it was easier than what I expected. So for me, reaching out to the faculty and my cohort, it gave me more they were so flexible with the everything, and with the time being and the deadlines. We knew that this time, COVID time, people had different different cases, and they had to take care of their children, their house, work, and therefore specifically this time, the faculty and the professors, they were super flexible. that that was the one thing very helpful for us, being less stressed about everything. But apart from that, I found that I actually have more time because I don't have to commute anywhere, and I can work from home and study. I found that I actually have now more time to myself. I can go out and exercise or have walk. So yeah, this, but apart from that, what advice I would give is, I know it's hard, and for some people it's extra challenging, but mental health and taking some time for themselves is one key aspect here. Sometimes it feels like everything is too much. It comes to like it's overloaded, but taking a pause and having some time for yourself is very important.
I'll just jump in because I started the program in the virtual setting, and particularly if you're in school right now, it will be an easier transition if you're in the virtual setting. But if not, I would say, you know, try not to stress, but also lean in on your classmates in your cohort, because they can be a sounding board, particularly just to kind of have those informal conversations with those that might be used to the virtual setting, who can provide different tips and strategies in terms of how to best navigate this virtual realm. But just to also just have those conversations. So, and don't be afraid to talk to your professors, to talk up to talk through assignments or your concerns as well. They are, it can be a great sounding board to kind of help ease that anxiety, but also provide additional tools for you to make sure that you are successful within your program. That's one thing that I can say across the board from all professors, is they have been a great sounding board and have been a great resource to make sure that we are excelling in this virtual environment.
Awesome, thank you. So another question here. How did you get to feeling comfortable and feeling like you were in a safe environment to speak your mind with your classmates and others in your cohort?
Certainly, that's a great question. The best advice I can give is just leaving your feelings at the door. This is an environment where you want to learn. And so in order to learn, you must recognize that you don't have all the information coming in. Otherwise, you won't be in the setting, or you should not be in the setting. I certainly wouldn't take a class if I felt like I had already superseded everything that I needed to know about the class. And so leaving your feelings at the door, being genuine and being open and honest and transparent, not being afraid to say that you don't know. This is not I don't enter a classroom making any assumptions about any of the material or the theories or the concepts. If it's a difficult read, I'm open and I'm honest, and I let the professor and my other cohorts know that it was a difficult read and why that may have been difficult, either through just personal experiences or previous experiences or work experiences. And so, you know, I know that I have a way of seeing the world. I'm a former police officer for 7 years in DC and criminal investigator now. And so then I know that I can be slighted in ways where I see the world differently sometimes than people that have never worked in investigations or have never, you know, worked in policing. And so these are conversations that when we get into, I have to be willing to challenge my implicit biases and be able to look past what I believe as a subject matter expert to kind of understand and really hear from my fellow cohorts, because I know that they have value. And lastly, respect. And just respect. If you can respect everyone that's on that line or everyone that's in that classroom, they are sitting in the same seat that you're sitting in. They have their own shared experiences. They have their own shared accomplishments. And just know that they're not there by chance, that they have earned their right to be in that classroom as well. And so if you can respect them, then certainly you will get that respect in return. And the environment will kind of create itself. Your professor will do all he or she can to create that environment by saying, hey, you know, we want to be psychologically safe. We want to be psychologically safe. And you'll hear that. You may enter into some type of cohort agreement. But again, it's really going to be upon the students, and every student has that responsibility before walking in class or before logging in online to just kind of check their feelings out the door.
I'll just add one thing. First, echo everything that was said, but one thing that I would add is more likely than not, somebody else or the vast majority of your classmates and cohorts is feeling the same thing. And it's really kind of just that one person to say something and you'd be surprised of how many likes in the group me and how many follow-ups, and then the floodgates open. As you see, everybody's kind of shaking their head. So, you know, if you feel like, oh, an assignment is silly, you're probably not the only one that feels an assignment is silly. Or if you feel that I don't understand what the professor is asking, more likely than not, you are not the only one, and you can kind of talk through what that assignment is, or it can be the whole class coming together, and even though it might be coming from one person's email account, sending that professor an email, but everybody in the class is also on that email, so you're not standing alone also. So I would say it's kind of just be comfortable and just put yourself out there, but also it might be helpful. The one thing that my cohort did at the beginning, particularly as it related to our group me conversations, is to kind of set up those ground rules, and what was said in the group me stays within that group me realm, and it hasn't failed us.
Thanks, guys. Another question we have: what are some of the biggest challenges you've experienced while being in your program, and how have you overcome them, or how have you used some resources at GW or outside of GW to overcome those challenges?
So one major challenge that my my cohort experienced, we started in the fall, so it was all online, was with this pre-practicum portfolio. So there was, what we've learned is that because everything's online, we're getting an abundance of emails from everything, and that's hard to filter through, getting a bunch of emails that might not be relevant to you. And so some of us kind of missed this really important meeting, and we didn't really know our advisor. And this pre-practicum portfolio, we all kind of realized that the deadline was coming up in January. And so we together, like Cortland said, you know, if somebody has a question, like normally other people like have the same question or have the same feeling. And so we kind of all talked about how some of the stuff was unrealistic because they didn't really inform all of us about this, even though it seemed like they had, but there was like a mix up because not everybody was getting emails. And so we all were able to reach out to faculty and reach out to administration. And we've been working together to work through that. And it took us a few times to talk to them about it, but they were understanding when they realized it was kind of a whole group thing. And we're all going to make the deadline, and they're only making exceptions on a case-by-case basis. And we've been able to figure out together as a cohort.
Awesome. So this question is a little bit more practical. So how do you guys take notes when you're in class? Do you do it with two screens? What is your study routine like? More of a practical type question.
Yeah, I can go first. For me, I like using OneNote to take notes, and that's my number one tool. And also I love using Google Documents, which is easy to share with everyone and also easy to find when you look for something. So usually for us, the professors share everything on Blackboard, the slides, the materials and everything. So when you are in synchronous classes, you don't have to really take notes because you will have all of those materials available for you. So I don't take notes usually when I listen, but when I read and study for myself, I use the OneNotes and Google Documents, which is very important for me. And when I go back and again do my writing papers, it will be very helpful. So I would strongly recommend. There are also many other tools, and I find that every person has their own easy tools that they use. So I would recommend to search for all of them. It's different for different computers, but you will find your own tool that you find it easy.
I'll just jump in. So the same thing, but two different things at the same time. So study sessions. So sometimes we have done just group study sessions just within my own cohort. So somebody will just drop in the chat, hey, just know I'm working on Wednesday at 7 p.m. I can send a Zoom link for those who want to join in. So even though we're still virtual, we're in one place and we can still be working on different assignments for different professors or be working on the same assignment. And in that way, we can easily like unmute and talk to each other to, you know, just talk things out and stuff as well. But you kind of created that designated time to do work, because I know that was hard for me as I started school back up again. Be like, when do I want to do work? I'm home. I'm not going anywhere. It's not like I'm leaving class and then can go to the library or vice versa. So just trying to create a somewhat of a schedule. But also the library has virtual study sessions, and so for that you have to just register in advance, and just like I mentioned, it's just a time frame in which you just kind of go and do work, so you're kind of accountable for yourself. It's not like people are checking up on you or anything of that nature. But if you're the type that kind of needs like that structured time frame or kind of like that push to actually do work, then also the library provides that opportunity for you.
Awesome. That's a good segue into this next question. Do you feel there's a collaborative environment with other students in your classes? Do students typically work on assignments together outside of class? And this is a little bit more nuanced, but are students friends with one another and social outside of the classroom? And I think that's a little harder to answer if you've only been doing online learning up to this point. But in general, if you can speak to the collaborative environment of students in your cohort.
Okay. So I do believe that students are friends outside. I have a couple of, obviously when your cohort is large, you kind of find a subgroup within that cohort that you may communicate more frequently with. And so for me, I definitely have a group of friends that I would consider even past this program that we will probably remain in contact with going forward, just through nature of how we've all come together and experiences and just dialogue that we've had. I think that that's a more of a natural, genuine process that just kind of happens. It's not anything that you need to foster or anything that you need to kind of concentrate on specifically. But I guess if you wanted to make yourself more available, you can absolutely do that. For me, working with the entire cohort, everyone is always nice and friendly. If you hadn't gotten a book or somebody's waiting on a book and somebody needs a chapter and somebody needs this, it's just a text, or it is a mention when we're leaving out of class. Everyone seems to be on the same page. Everyone seems to want their fellow cohort or their fellow students to exceed in this program. And so again, if you want to be the social butterfly to kind of maneuver through the cohort, making friends, I can definitely see that. Or if you want to be just kind of more reserved, but still intertwined in your cohort, you can do that as well. It just depends on the schedule and your time and how much flexibility that you actually have in your personal life.
For me, just attending online classes in the synchronous sections and being friends with all the entire cohort, it's not easy. I find that people who work in the similar projects or the same projects, they usually get closer to each other. And then also there are some people you will always see in your course selections or in every semester she or he is taking the same similar classes than you, then you will know that that person has a similar interest like you. So what I did is I reached out to those people, and so maybe we could just meet online and discuss about these classes and interests. So it's totally up to you. You can make friends, but within this process, you will see that yes, it's possible, but you have to also make an effort and have some time for that. But I also have some really good friends that I know that I found working in the same projects. So it's
Thank you. Okay, so if any of you have any advice on how to find housing in the DC area, or any places that you feel like are your favorite spots to go study or visit in DC, anything related to living in DC.
jump in. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
For me, a spot that I liked, I'm not sure if it was the best study spot, but it was Busboys and Poets. It's a great spot. I love the spot. And DC is unique. It's hard to really direct you in DC as far as living, because it's expensive, and so it's quite surprising the cost that it would be to house yourself in DC. If you choose to live in DC, certainly know and have a budget, stick to that budget. There are some really nice areas on the outskirts of DC, with Alexandria or Fort Washington, but you kind of have to be kind of careful going to certain areas. I know that's very general, but without really understanding budget, I really can't direct you into how to find housing in DC, because it's just really expensive, and you're going to be fighting for parking. Parking is really strenuous around DC, and it's tight. And so just know that if you choose to live in DC, find an area that's reasonable for you, that's not too far from the university if you can, and also get to understand and get to know your neighbors. Is probably the best advice that I can give. But you're looking for just a nice, cool spot that will allow you to study every now and again. Busboys and Poets is definitely a spot that I would recommend.
Yeah, for those who have to relocate to DC, I did the similar thing. I moved from Seattle to DC in January. So looking for houses, there are many platforms to find specifically for students and even for GW students. And there's this off-campus platform. I forgot the name, but you can meet the people there and you can send requests. There are many people who are either offering the room or looking for a roommate. So it's a great platform you can utilize. And also there are a lot of groups, Facebook groups in DC area where people are always constantly sharing the houses and looking for people. So it's a great tool to use. Also for I guess for me, spring was the highlight in DC. So the weather is nice. You can just take your computer and go out in the park, and everything is so beautiful. You can easily, I'm an outdoor person, so I love working outside. Also, many coffee shops around that you will see people like you are studying at the same time. For me, one specific place is good in, I think, in Clarenton, called East West, the coffee shop. So it's my favorite. I would definitely recommend you.
That's all really great advice. I just moved to DC a few years ago, and I really heavily use the Facebook groups. So I definitely recommend looking there. And then Aitaj mentioned the off-campus housing resource that GW has. If you want a direct link to that, you can always message the admissions team and we can send you some more information about that. Has anyone here been able to take advantage of the Washington DC consortium of schools in terms of registering for courses at Georgetown or American or Howard? No, nobody here has used that? Okay, well, I can speak about it a little bit. So you do have that option. There's a consortium in DC that GW is a part of. I believe it's like 10 or more schools in the area, including Georgetown, Howard, American, University of Maryland, George Mason. And if there's an elective that fits your program that you find at that school and not necessarily at GW, you can register through the consortium. And it's a fairly easy process. The registrar is actually the place that you would go to be able to do that. Okay, let me see here. So for those of you who've had electives in their programs, what electives did you take and how difficult was it to fit an elective into your program plan? And I know this is specific to programs, but it would be great just to hear about a couple of different people's experiences with that.
I guess I'll jump in. So my program actually only offers one elective. Every course is told to you. And I would say I kind of had a choice ultimately. So how it fit into my program, it basically was a refresher course in essence. So I had to take stats. And I haven't taken stats since my junior year of undergrad, which was I think about like 10 years or so ago. So to kind of help me refresh on stats on a doctoral level, I took intro to stats. And that way that kind of took my elective away from me. But having that conversation with my advisor prior to, we decided that was the best course of action, but also just looking at other potential classes in which an elective might count towards your degree program. So just like Ben said, it would just have to be a conversation with your advisor and also with your program to see, you know, one, can you take an elective outside of your program or outside of your department? Then if yes, can you take an elective outside of your school? So, you know, the policies differ for programs for sure.
Yeah. Speaking from the admission side of things, I know that some programs are very strict. So Cortland, your program is boom, boom, boom. You have to take them in a certain order. Clinical mental health counseling, I think, is very similar in that way. But international education, for example, I know there's lots of room for electives. So it does depend on the program. And if you do have any specific questions about your own program, feel free to reach out to my office and we can help you kind of figure that out there. You also have access to a student services representative on top of your faculty advisor who can help you with some of that as well. Okay, we have about 15 minutes left and tons of questions. So if we don't get to your question today, you can also email us as well and we'll be able to answer those. We also have a live chat going on right now until 4 p.m. on our website. So if you want to ask your question in the live chat, we can do that too. What are your typical class sizes, and do you feel that there's equal participation in class discussions and in group work when you're put into group settings?
I can start with that. So a lot of my classes are rehabilitation counseling and clinical mental health counseling kind of put in one. And so for this semester, we had a interview skills class, and they wanted everybody to be able to kind of participate and practice. And so they broke that into two. And then they realized that they wanted to break down some of the other classes so that the class size wasn't like over 30 people. Because there's some people that don't like having their cameras on the whole time, and there's some people that don't like to participate as much. There's some people that do, and normally the teachers will kind of ask you to participate if they haven't heard from you or something. But then we also do, so they ended up breaking down all of our classes and split them in half, but we're still combined in each of our classes with rehabilitation. But then they do breakout groups, that's kind of a time for you to bond with other people in your class where you're not talking in front of the teacher. But also in that, normally everybody kind of talks because there's only like 3 or 4 or 5 people that are in a little breakout group, and people are more open to talk in those kinds of things.
I would say for me, mine is slightly different. So my cohort is a cohort of 6. And that's including myself. So it is the expectation that all of us are talking. So nobody can hide whatsoever, because the professor can easily remember who talked and who didn't. But also one of the things that we kind of did because of the exuberant amount of readings and that we had to do prior to each class, we would at time go into class with a game plan in terms of who would start off answering the questions or leading that discussion, who would be the follow-up person and potentially the third person. And then that way we can kind of trickle off to the other people because we kind of, it's a lot of reading. So to kind of, I wouldn't say game the system, but really just helping each other out. But in terms of the more open classes, which are like the research classes, because generally in the doctoral level, everybody has to take quantitative studies, everybody has to take qualitative studies and things of that nature. So there's more people in that class. So you have an opportunity to interact with people outside of your own program to talk about their interests, to kind of get their additional insights and to learn more in those group project settings.
Thank you. So this is kind of a long one. So as a first generation student, is there any advice you could give on graduate school in general? Is there anything that has been helpful or influenced your academic success? And is there any one advisors or faculty that have been the most helpful for you throughout your program, or any sort of academic resources that have aided you in your studies?
To answer, I think 2 of those questions. One, somebody said this earlier, but don't be afraid to reach out to your professors. If you have questions about an assignment, like the other day, I was just doing an assignment and I wasn't sure where to implement this one part in the assignment. And I just emailed the teacher, even though it was due that day, asking kind of, did I do this correctly before I turned it in? And I was able to get that clarification, and they appreciated my asking for that clarification. And then another thing that was really helpful for me actually when coming in is somebody said, don't be afraid to ask some of your teachers for an extension if you need it before the date. Because sometimes life gets in the way. We have jobs, we have other things to balance. And being really open with your professors can be really helpful if you need an extension.
I would jump in and say, and kind of just to reiterate a point that I made earlier, is to lean in also to your cohort and to just being able to ask questions to your peers and whatnot, because more likely than not, again, you're not the only one with the same question, and or they know the answer. Because you don't know what you don't know, right? And sometimes, and you don't know what you don't know to ask to know. So sometimes it's just putting things out there, but also just being open with your cohort people, but also emphasizing to your cohort or to your classmates, hey, if there's a question or a comment or something or whatever the case may be, please share that communication, so we can all be on the same accord, and just being able to provide the various resources. But generally, from my experience, there's always at least one or two people that have some type of experience that just offer it continuously on a subject matter, on location, on books, on what professors to have. More likely than not, you might have somebody in your program who attended GW as an undergrad student who can provide additional resources in which everybody else can't, because they know that the system better, because everybody else might be new. So it might be just leaning into them in terms of, hey, can you provide any resources, any information just about how to navigate GW, how to navigate the DC metro area? And you'd be surprised in terms of the information that they are sharing, in which, wow, I didn't even know to think about that or to ask that. And one last thing, I'm not sure, and Ben can answer this question. When I entered the program, they created a Facebook group for all of GShed, if I'm not mistaken, who was entering in fall of 2020. That's when I started. So that way you still have an opportunity to interact with not just your own cohort members, but everybody who is starting at GShed during your particular term to ask questions.
One thing I would quickly add is choosing the courses. IEP offers a lot of good courses. You feel like you want to take everything, but designing your program accordingly is very important. I found it very important. And talking to your advisors and any member of faculty or any faculty member that has the focus that you are interested in, talking to them ahead of the enrollment is very helpful. Then they will give you insight, or talking to the students who previously took that class is very important. Then you feel like you are not wasting your time learning something that maybe you are not interested or will not be helpful for you. So designing your course, whole 2-year course, or I don't know, for the doctoral degrees is very important, at least to see all of the options ahead. That's what I would add.
Thanks, Aitaj. Yeah, we do have a Facebook group for those entering in 2021, so it's either summer or fall of 2021. And you should have been getting emails about that if you were admitted into your program. If not, you can reach out to the admissions office and we can send you the direct link to that as well. But I have heard from lots of students who joined the group last year that they found it to be helpful to be in the group. So that's something that you can check out. In terms of meeting students outside of your program, GShed is tricky because everyone has their own individual programs that may not overlap with one another. So we have here, even in front of us, we have 4 different very unique programs that focus on different things, different classes. So a lot of the time students feel kind of stuck in the group that they're in, that they have classes with. It's been trickier to do this virtually, but my office is the Office of Student Life. So we also have career services and student services workers in my office when we're physically in the building. And I know that we're hoping to open up on campus this fall, fingers crossed for that. But we usually have events at our building, like happy hours we'll have, and we have a graduation gala every year and things like that. That we unfortunately weren't able to do this past year, but hopefully we'll be able to do this upcoming year. And that's a great place to meet people outside of your own cohort as well. So we'll have one last question here. we have about 4 minutes until this is over, but thank you everyone for joining us. So one last question, is there something you know now that you wish you knew at the beginning of your program? And feel free to take some time to think about it.
So I'll take a shot at it. The thing that I wished, that I know now that I wish I would have known before entering the program is that you have help. And again, this is something that I had to learn over the course of taking classes and, interacting with professors. You have help. Cortland, you touched on this earlier about, just sometimes you take a different part of the reading and you allow, your other students to open up class, or if you're presenting a presentation and it's 30 or it's 45 minutes or it's a complete hour, and you have about 45 minutes worth of presentation, and you prompt your other cohort students to ask you questions, and make sure that they come into class prepared, because they're helping you carry yourself across the finish line, and you're also doing the same thing for them. And so just understanding that you have help has allowed me to be able to take a deep breath, breathe, and then really just concentrate on excelling at the work, and really getting the concepts and the theories and the practical knowledge to take outside of GW, because we know that education is one thing, but you still have to apply the learning to the real world scenarios. And so just being able to understand that you have help, you're not in it alone, and people are there, and use your resources wisely.
To piggyback off of that, I would say is when you get your syllabus and you see the list of books, go through the GW library first, because the GW library, and I'm not saying physically go, but at least on the website, you'd be surprised how many books you can get for free from the GW library that you do not have to pay for unless you want to actually purchase the book. And that took me a while to like grasp and understand. Like somebody mentioned it during orientation, I just kind of like brushed it off. But it wasn't until this semester, and even this semester, I went on like a little bit late and checked. I was like, oh, they have this book, but I already purchased the book and it was too late for me to return some of them. And I'm just like, ugh. So yes, definitely, once you get your syllabus first, go run that through the GW library website to see if the library has it. But also if it doesn't have it, ask a librarian, or sometimes, not sometimes, but you can fill out a form in which they might ask their counterparts across the country to see if they can even get that book, or to get that research article that might cost that the professor is requiring. So the library is a great resource and tool as it relates to books and articles and things of that nature that might be a requirement.
One other thing, I kind of talked about advisors a couple times. So because I am in such a big program, if you don't know your advisor after a while, you should definitely reach out to your advisor, because they might be overwhelmed with the amount of people that are in your cohort if you are in a big cohort like mine.
All right, Aitaj, did you want to add something?
Yeah, just one thing, that connection, the power of connection, I would say, that I learned it through my program, that it's very important, and try to connect or add in the LinkedIn when you have a guest speaker in your classes. It's very important and it will be helpful and handy.
Great, yeah. Thank you all so much for doing this today. That was really awesome. We had tons of attendees, tons of questions, and many that we didn't get a chance to answer, but I think we went over a lot of really good things today. So thank you to all of you. And if we didn't answer your question and you still would like to reach out to us and get an answer for that, we can connect you with current students, my office, the admissions office. We can also connect you with faculty. So if you do have anything any pressing questions that you still would like answered before coming this summer or fall, please feel free to reach out. But otherwise, thanks all for joining and enjoy the rest of your days. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.